Imagine waking up in a world where the storm of global conflict known as World War II never occurred. No Pearl Harbor, no D-Day, no bombings over London or Hiroshima. How would the world look? Would technology and human progress have accelerated in the same way? What about the geopolitical map? Let's dive deep into this speculative what-if scenario as we explore the potential ramifications of a world untouched by the devastating effects of the war. The year is 1939. Adolf Hitler is still at the helm of Nazi Germany, but instead of invading Poland and starting the largest conflict in human history, he chooses diplomacy. The world holds its breath. Would the Axis powers have risen to dominance without military confrontation? Could the global powers have maintained a fragile peace, or would tensions inevitably explode elsewhere? Let's break it all down. Without the outbreak of World War II, Nazi Germany would have faced a completely different set of challenges. Hitler, instead of focusing on conquest, might have spent more time stabilizing the economy, which had been crushed under the weight of the Treaty of Versailles. The massive reparations imposed on Germany following World War I would have remained a source of unrest. Perhaps instead of war, Nazi Germany would have become a rising superpower based on economic strength, harnessing the power of its innovative industries like automotive manufacturing, Volkswagen, Mercedes-Benz, and possibly leading the way into the jet age earlier than expected. But of course, let's not forget the ideological fuel that powered Hitler's regime. The quest for Lebensraum, living space. While the war provided the means to pursue this, would diplomacy have worked in the long run? Could the German people have accepted a peaceful rise to power, or would there have been growing domestic unrest over the lack of territorial expansion? Without the invasion of Poland in 1939, France and the United Kingdom may have avoided declaring war, and Europe could have seen an economic boom instead of devastating destruction. Could this have led to the collapse of democracies and the rise of fascism in other parts of Europe? Or might the threat of fascism have been contained? With no World War II, the United States would have likely remained more isolationist. The economic toll of the Great Depression would have taken longer to overcome without the mobilization brought by war. While the New Deal policies of President Franklin D. Roosevelt helped alleviate some of the damage, the urgency to ramp up production for war might not have occurred. As a result, the U.S. may have missed the chance to fully emerge as a global superpower in the immediate post-war years. But what if the U.S. had never become the arsenal of democracy? Could the Soviet Union have expanded its influence without the deterrent of a Western ally? Stalin, without the distraction of war in the East, might have turned his attention more fully toward the conquest of Europe. The Soviet Union may have become the dominant power, using propaganda and economic power to sway nations into its sphere, resulting in a much colder, much longer Cold War, or perhaps even a stronger push for global communism. On the other hand, the United Kingdom and France might have been able to rebuild their empires without the crippling losses of both manpower and resources. The British Empire, though already on the decline, could have potentially held on to key colonies like India a little longer. A prolonged British Empire might have altered the independence movements across the world, delaying the rise of new nations and the eventual dismantling of colonial rule. Without World War II, the technological advancements that shaped the mid-20th century might have taken a different course. The war acted as a catalyst for many innovations, from radar and jet engines to the development of nuclear power. With no global conflict to drive these advancements, would technology have progressed as quickly? Would the space race have started earlier? The rocket technology developed during the war by Nazi Germany's Werner von Braun led directly to the U.S. space program and eventually to the moon landing. Without the war, might the Soviet Union have beaten the United States to space? Even if the military-industrial complex didn't drive innovation, would private industries have taken the lead? The technology sector was already expanding with the advent of computers, but would the world have seen the rise of tech giants like Apple or IBM without the pressures of the Cold War? Additionally, without the war, the shift toward a more globalized world economy may have taken longer to materialize. The United Nations, established in 1945 to prevent further global conflict, may never have been formed. Instead, the world might have continued under a more fragmented, protectionist model. Trade barriers might have remained higher, and the global economy could have been far more decentralized. Let's also consider the cultural and social effects. The war produced immense trauma, but also fostered a unique era of cultural exchange and integration. With no war, the civil rights movement in the U.S. may not have seen the same urgency, and the global push for human rights might have been delayed. Social movements, from the fight for gender equality to racial equality, often grew in the aftermath of the war. Without the collective trauma and the need to rebuild societies, it's possible that these movements would have lacked the same momentum. Post-war cinema, music, and art were deeply influenced by the horrors of the war. Could the creativity of Hollywood in the 1940s and 1950s, which tackled the realities of war and its aftermath, have been stunted? Would the global fascination with the heroic nature of war have been replaced by a more intellectual, introspective look at human society? In conclusion, the world without World War II would have been unrecognizable. While it's impossible to say with certainty how history would have unfolded, it's clear that the war changed everything, from the political landscape to technological innovation and social movements. A world without World War II may have been less dramatic, less explosive, but perhaps just as transformative. Would we have had the civil rights movements or space exploration? Would the nuclear age still have happened, but in a more controlled manner? Perhaps the world would have been more peaceful, or perhaps the tensions would have boiled over in a different way. In the end, we can only speculate, but one thing is for sure. The impact of World War II on our modern world is undeniable. Would a peaceful 20th century have been better or worse? That's a question worth asking. Don't miss the next speculation. Subscribe now.